Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Phil from the Checkerboard Kids over here right now, and I tell you, it is my pleasure to introduce the one, the only, the 1865. Let's give it up for the 1865, ladies and gentlemen. All right, you might not know about 1865, but let's give it up. Honey Child Coleman.
Yes.
Yes. And we have Flora.
Hi.
And
Lucchini.
And the Biz.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Representing him by his proper name, the Biz.
The royal we.
Yes, they're using the royal we. And it is a pleasure. Now, Biz, you've been on the show before with Honey Child.
Yes.
So it is a pleasure to have you back on the show.
It's good to be back. It's good to be seen.
And Flora, you are a virgin to our show, so we appreciate you coming here and being here with us.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for having me.
Right on. And now there is a member missing. Sasha's missing.
Sasha is missing.
All right. What is Sasha doing? Where his
Saving the world.
Sasha's saving the world.
One.
Okay.
Yes. One film at a time.
Okay. Can you say a little bit more, or is that as quiet as kept?
It's a little quiet as kept.
Okay.
You know.
We will wait for the next thing. Right there. Go wiki Sasha and see what Sasha's up to. But I will say this, Honey Child, would you please go around and give the bona fides of your lovely band?
All right. I'm Honey Child Coleman, lead singer and baritone guitar. Flora Lucchini.
Thank you. I'm Flora Lucchini, also known as Flora from Ma'afa, which is the other band that I'm in, Ma'afa Hardcore with Biz.
Yeah.
He plays djembe in my hardcore band, Ma'afa, and I am a professional bass player and also a vocalist.
Right on.
BGVs. I'm Biz, drummer, djembe fula for Ma'afa. That's about it. That's all.
That's all you're repping right now. And Honey Child, I know that you have a kind of box lighter, or can I say backslider or box lighter? How do I pronounce it proper?
Well, originally we were Backslider, but we found out there's a band from Philly with the same name. And we also like Johann Sebastian Bach. So we changed the spelling of our name.
So it's box
I'm
lighter.
wondering if the backslider from Philly is my friend Sonic's band. Because I know, so one of the first hardcore shows I ever went to when I was very young in Silver Spring, Maryland, was a band called Common Enemy. And the lead singer, I believe their name at the time was Sonic. They went on to do another band, and I actually ran into them after like a decade of not seeing them, working sound at Afropunk for the first 1865 show. Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a random coincidence.
Yes.
You know what? I'd like to say I don't believe in coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidences.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Wow.
Yeah, Patrick was doing our sound, and then I friended him on Instagram.
Sorry, yes, that's their name.
And then he was
Sorry.
like, "Oh, you're the other Backslider."
See, okay, thank you, because I get, oh, they're gonna kill me when they see this, but I get the vocals names all mixed up because I know whoever was doing the sound is the original singer of Common Enemy that I not prefer, but that I know personally. And I was like, wait, and Honey Child, and then I was like, wait a second.
You see, this is the 6 degrees.
Honey Child,
Yes.
your history goes very deep in New York, and you're originally from Kentucky, yes?
Yes.
And but your tendrils, whether flattened or not, go very deep into the city of New York and in the history of punk and all this. Would you elaborate a little further and say a little what's going on?
Oh boy. Well, Backslider, we've been together about 10 years, maybe longer.
You guys are common law married.
Pretty much. We also share a Ma'afa member in our drummer Ramsey, who is also in Rebelmatic.
Oh, and also,
and Funkface.
Yeah, and also
Dancing Dream.
Right.
And I mean, it's Ramsey is.
I definitely know. I think any ska bands involved? I think.
Yeah, he's in Beat Brigade.
Yeah, well, Beat Brigade. Come on, Beat Brigade has done the show.
Yes,
There you go.
yes.
Ramsey gets around, much like any social disease, but still, he's the good kind of social disease. Right.
Yes, to know.
Yes. So yeah, we've been together a while. Anu, our guitarist and other singer, I've known since the Meow Mix days. So
Wow, taking me back over there.
back to the early '90s, LES. So
Now, we're here to talk about the 1865. Now, the
Yes.
1865 is a little different than all the other bands, and I've seen. And when I've seen you perform, like you guys are opening a couple of eyes and raising a couple of eyebrows. So if
Maybe
anybody
a
would like
couple
to speak to
fists.
this, raising a couple of fists over
couple
here.
voices.
Right.
So say a little something about that.
I want to actually talk about the first show that Flora played with us.
Okay.
Because two amazing things happened.
Yes.
It was the Black and Blue Ball Eve, right?
Yeah, it was the Black and Blue Bowl, which is happening
Yeah.
this weekend.
So to me, like I've never pretended that I was in New York hardcore because I wasn't. I was never in any scene. So it's my first time playing in a room of pretty much hardcore and skinheads, and the only other women besides us were the girlfriends of those guys.
Yeah.
So, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
And then I walk into
I'm
the
used to
venue,
it.
and the DJ is playing freestyle. And I'm like, this is why I love New York.
That's
like,
probably said the
where
kid,
are
yeah.
you going to find these things happening in the
Yeah.
same room? And then, of course, Flora killed it. So
Thank you.
Right
Thank
on.
the
you.
rest is history.
Yeah.
But I just thought, I try to explain to people, what our scene is like, how all these different circles overlap, and it makes sense.
Yeah. That's one thing also about growing up, as I say, below the Mason-Dixon. And the hardcore scene in the DMV area and Virginia, North Carolina, whatever, back then, is that in hindsight, in comparison to what I've experienced being in New York for so long, it is a little segregated in terms of there's this type of hardcore scene and then there's this type of hardcore scene and the skinheads are over here and then they're broken into factions, which isn't unique to that area. That's a very historical way of looking at it. What I loved about New York hardcore growing up, even though I'm very proud to be from DC and I rep it very hard, but I've always belonged in New York. That's where I feel the most myself and the safest. And I think it's because I am very, I'm not a monolithic identity kind of person. I don't have just, I do one thing and I believe in another thing. I have many cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, musical styles, experiences, and New York is one of the only places where I saw people who look like me or people in my family being able to be like, oh, you're here now. Okay, yeah, let's get to work. Yeah, duh. Everything that I was made to feel weird about, as a kid, or different or othered about. In New York, I met 5 other people that have the same experiences,
Yep.
and we happen to all be Black and brown or BIPOC, whatever, and we all happen to be into hardcore, but we're also into Gilmore Girls, but we're also into classical, and we're also into jazz, and we also love poetry, and that's normalized. There's it takes a lot to shock us here in New York.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for us to be like, whoa, that's weird. You won't hear that often, and in DC, it's the idea of with my band Maafa, percussion in hardcore mixed with jazz, mixed whatever. I got to New York, me and Honeychild met, and it was duh. Me and Biz met, it was duh.
Yeah.
And then Honeychild was yeah, what are you doing for Black and Blue Bowl? Want to play? It was the Black and Blue pregame for the Danny Diaz person thing or that Friday night. So, but it was great. It was a great experience. As a hardcore kid, that was my first
Yeah.
I was oh my gosh, milestone. The little kid in me who's a hardcore kid, New York hardcore kid, was very happy that I had that opportunity.
Now this is an important thing that because you'll see if you look outside certain spectrums, you'll notice that people in the skater groups or in goth, there are situations where people are you can't be Black and do this. I mean, but in New York or everybody's just WTF? What? It's okay. We can do this thing. We can be this thing. Another thing, I'm gonna throw out some things that people have said because I remember once back in the days, and this was back in the 80s or so. People said, hey, 80s, early 90s of the Checkerboard kids. People were like, hey, a lot of bands. We're doing a festival and stuff like that. Can you hip us to some good bands that we could have? And then they stipulate no Black rock bands. No Black rock bands? What the heck? So, I mean, I knew bands this was around the time of 24/7 Spies.
Yeah.
This is I remember Gamify Acme with Jaffa Reb, if you know this guy, awesome person. Bushman, these really, all right. And this is the time.
Shout out to Ryan.
Right on. So this is the time of Fishbone and these are the influences. These are the things that are unapologetically black folks.
Wait,
Just so
I
you know.
also want to know y'all's take on Urban Dance Squad. Remember them? Or what was their name? Yeah, okay.
Oh, I love Urban Dance Squad.
Okay, see, I knew that. Okay,
Urban
we
Dance
gotta talk
Squad,
about
please.
that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
I
you
love
could
Urban Dance Squad.
Bond on
Proceed.
Urban Dance Squad.
I
All right.
just got hip.
So I'm going to throw some more things out here. So we talked about skater culture. So punk, which is like Afro punk, which I know, Biz, you're going to want to definitely say a little something on this. Goth, comic book communities, blurreds, you know,
Yep.
for all the blurred community out there, shout outs. And now the black vegans. This is some new
That's
stuff
huge.
that it's getting huge. And well, finding out about the black vegan community was one thing, but then to learn that there's a whole flip side that there was a whole like vegan like white supremacy thing going on. I was like, what the heck?
Say what?
Yeah, I can't even like you know.
Shocker.
Yeah, it's a whole
Oh,
thing to be investigated at another right.
That's a whole
if
other
you could please
segment.
get the look of WTF on Biz's face right now. Can we? Sorry to direct from behind, but the look that you're giving here, Biz. Biz.
What?
I'm just so intrigued.
Yeah, I think we need to have a separate segment on that alone.
Okay.
With some of our foodie people.
I just want to say
'cause-
that
Yes,
right
please.
now I've been quoted in a lot of interviews and stuff as trying to have a name for what we're all doing. Rebelmatic Maafa, 1865 Winterwolf.
Yes, there's a whole crew of you. What is this? Does it have a name?
I call it the Black Punk Renaissance.
Ooh, I like
And
it.
so what I
Copyright
want
that.
to make very clear is that veganism, environmentalism, all those things, agriculture, whatever, none of that is new to African descent people. That's like literally how we got here. You know what I mean? Like literally
Preach, my
started
sis,
with us.
preach.
However, what is new is the hyper commodification and trendiness of being black and doing what's making it seem cool is that this trend is also telling on itself.
Yeah.
It's saying that
They're showing
these
their whole ass.
things and these communities and these lifestyles and whatever and food and whatever, that they are white or non-black or othered. And when black people do it, oh my gosh, so cool. Like this black nerd, black blurred, black vegan, black whatever. I was like, I remember all the black anime kids back in the mid 90s. I remember, you
But there
know.
was also not as much self.
Right.
Yeah. They were just all
Sure.
part of everybody was
community.
part of the crew, and we were all
Exactly.
going down to see the
And
same films.
I wouldn't say that New York or DC or whatever, in my experiences from the 90s and whatever, that everything was accepted and normalized and was all cool. We gotta be careful not to like hyper glamorize that time period. We gotta tell the truth. And the truth is, we didn't have the vocabulary or the knowledge or the access to resources that we have now to critically analyze our identity and have vocabulary for it. So we kind of just got all stuck together. It wasn't intentional, and it wasn't with the intention of like, kumbaya, we are the world. It just happened. You'd go to a hardcore show in New York back in the day, or wherever, in Chicago or DC, and you'd have a goth band, an industrial band, a metal band, a punk band. Some politics were left, some politics were right, some people just wanted to do drugs and drink. We figured it out. Later on, the segregation of our scenes happened almost out of necessity, because then the Nazi skinheads and then the black punks and then the kind of like white fence walking folks, people's lives started to get put in danger, getting into fights, whatever. So they were like, you have to book these bands here, these bands there, out of the security of the people. So let's tell the truth. And the truth is, we don't come from this hyper glamorized generation. I prefer my generation, but we don't come from a hyper glamorized generation of everything was perfect. We had to learn how to do that without social media. And
That's
now, because it makes white people money, now we're cool. Now it's cool to be black and punk. Now it's cool to be African. I'm Nigerian descent. Now we're African booty scratchers. Now all of a sudden we're, if I tell you, say I love you at every club. That's great. Love us, be us, yes. But let's be all the way honest, and let's tell all of the truth. Because it
Yeah.
wasn't all like that back in the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
all
And there was a
yeah.
thing they say.
Let's be all the way
like,
real.
If people are all down for it, but they don't want to claim. They don't want to claim it because they could just like that of a. I won't mention any singers that come in, grab some stuff from the community, and then bounce when it's convenient.
Right. Right.
So just saying.
Well, Afropunk as you look at the growth of it as an entity,
Yes.
paired with the growth of the internet and the ability for people to come together. Because when I first met Honeychild, MySpace was the only way that you knew how to find anything of new artistic, what have you. I said keyword to someone on my staff the other day, and they were like, "What was that?" And I was like, "That was the way that you
It's the
searched.
hashtag of
that
today.
you searched the internet."
Exactly.
Hashtag today, that's good.
And so
Metadata.
we sought community because you figured the only way I'm going to find somebody who's like me is at X event, and so then you went to X event because it was a community gathering, and now technology has grown and we have grown such that communities can easily self-identify, self-select, and move accordingly such that they are safe, such that they can say, well, this is what validates us. But at the time, the Afropunk community was very much a victim of a lot of that, the vampiric sort of victimization of something seems interesting, and it's because it's being born out of an artistic void, but it's not, it was not intended to be a space to be commodified and to say,
Right.
this
It was a
is,
reclamation.
let's
It
take it
wasn't
and
like
do
we're
it.
creating something new, like being black and vegan, being black and
Right.
into quote unquote nerdy stuff.
Right.
It's not new. It's just reclaiming on a public space who we always have been. And one of my, I've been very vocal, everyone knows. I'm very transparent about my political issues with Afropunk post James Spooner. And everyone understands that I feel like I feel, and I said what I said, and that's it, on period. However, what I will say is that that was the beauty of the Afropunk that I grew up seeing from afar, at the window, like one day I was gonna get there, you know what I mean? Of the message board and the parties and
yes, the
everything
message
that
board,
all
sure.
my older sibling kind of folks were old enough to go to, and I was just like a year or two too late,
That was
behind.
community.
Right, and so in DC what happened is the way we found out about shows and stuff like that before internet, before MySpace, was through zines and
yes.
word of mouth by going to like Smash Records is our generation records, right? No offense to anyone who doesn't like that comparison, but Smash for me was generation for you guys, right? And so we would go there, and our friends that would work there at tattoo shops would always have a stacks of flyers and things like that in zines. And in the back of zines, you could find the address to places, the phone number to the venues, or to someone in the band, and that's how you found out how to go. And there was a year right after the documentary came out, the original Afropunk documentary came out. I was too young to come up here. I wasn't allowed. I was old enough. I just wasn't allowed. You know, and the first little picture cutout thing I saw was of Honeychild with the green mohawk, and I cut that out before I even knew who she was, and I had it on my wall as a kid. And then, you know, exactly, I think 12 years later or 10 years later, I meet her and join 1865. Like, that was how we created a community, and we still do that. We don't need to because of social media, but I think it's a lost art.
It is.
Because it forces you to actually connect with people. And that's something that when I see people put on my culture as a costume once a year, whether it's on Halloween or for a music
St.
festival
Patrick's
in
Day,
Brooklyn
Saturday, Miami.
in August, like for me, it's incredibly, I experience it in a violent way, because to me it's a lifetime of dedicating my blood, sweat, and tears to hardcore consistently for over 20 years, and being, you know, kind of being told like, oh, that's cute, you know, that's nice, here you go, I want your hair, I want your lips, I want your clothes, I want your studs, I want that patch, who's X-ray specs, good enough, put it on my back,
Right.
let me go.
Who's
and
this
then
band?
and then go in the closet on Monday morning, put it back in the closet till next year, and go back to being like, oh, you listen to that kill your mother, kill your father music?
Right.
Whatever, get out of here. You're so weird. Why you listen to that? Why you like that? You know what I mean? But then once a year is Ashe, Nubian, Empress, Goddess, Queen, Mother Earth. You know what I mean? We all one. We is one. You know, I can't. I really can't with it. My door is always open. My band's door is always open, as you know, because we're in the same two bands.
Working that up.
My shows as a promoter are always open for everybody to come and experience and participate and be part of it. It centers Black people, always will. It's not exclusive to, but it will be centering Black people as priority. What's important is that come correctly, come with respect, and put in the work. Just like everybody else had to, and earn your way there. I think that there's something in that journey that humbles the human spirit to make you experience our culture as a legitimate culture. That's my life's work, is through a loving way of working. I want to prove that our culture, punk, hardcore, whatever, this is not alternative, because I'm not an alternative to nothing. I am my own thing. This here, it's okay to say punk, it's okay to say Black, those aren't cuss words. You know what I mean? Like, we can own this. This is our thing. And it's a legitimate culture, it's a legitimate lifestyle, it's a legitimate religion to some people, you know? So have the same respect you would for my being of African descent and my being indigenous as you would me being in the hardcore, as a hardcore kid. That's all I say. That's all I'm about. You know what I mean? And so when you make money off of my people and my culture, and we are going hungry, and my people's bands still don't get paid for the shows we do, whatever, I don't have respect for you, and I'm not required to. And that's just where I want to leave it with that. You know, so shout out to James Spooner, who's still till this day putting in the work, and the doors I walked through from my generation are because the people sitting here next to me, including himself and Ryan Bland and Tamara Colley and etc. Those doors, had they not opened it, I wouldn't be sitting on your couch right now.
Right.
So let's just be real clear.
Speaking of zines.
Shout out to James and the release of your new graphic novel, High Desert.
All right.
Yes.
Yes, James. I'm excited.
Well, tell me a little something about it. I mean, just break it down.
Isn't it the year that he moved to California from Brooklyn?
Okay.
And when he first discovered punk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's based on like things he really went through. He spent about 2 years illustrating it.
Wow, graphic
least.
novel. You know, all right,
Yes.
you say you're
Graphic
talking my
novel.
language right now.
Yes.
Yes.
So he's about to embark upon a speaking tour with it.
Let's get an Eisner for that, gentleman.
He's also producing a zine fest in conjunction with Black Girls World Zine at Mokata in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I'll be DJing there with CX Kidtronic.
Nice.
And I think they'll be doing some live screen printing as well.
Nice.
And just like all kinds of cool, arty, nerdy stuff
Right on.
that
Blurty.
speaks to all of us.
Arty,
Blurty.
nerdy, blurty.
things.
Yes.
All right.
Come as you are.
Yes.
So-
I will be there.
Now I would like to ask you about, first, political-minded stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. There's a lot of people that would like to silence history. As the 1865, your band literally brings the history. I can see people going, John Brown's gat. Who's John Brown? Better look him up. Just
Exactly.
saying.
Yeah.
And they're like, your band is primarily talking about Black issues and Black. Well, John Brown was white. What's up with
Right.
that? You don't be talking about him. You better look that up. And I literally, all right, I will say this. I went to where John Brown did his dirt right there, and I sent you a thing.
Yes,
for it, so
thank you for that wonderful magnet.
All right, right.
Yes.
Yes, I got a chance to go
that's
down to
cool.
West Virginia,
Yep.
where John Brown took over. You guys got to go look. You guys got to get
Look
on
it
that
up.
Wikipedia and start doing some research. Not even Wikipedia. Do some history looking. So if we were in a world right now where the world, as an educator, I'm speaking as an educator, as a school teacher, that there are places on this planet and this state, in this United States of America would like to completely eliminate certain parts of the history. What can people do to combat this? I mean, you're a band. You're bringing forth the word. You're bringing forth the information with music. And sorry to put this burden upon you. Like, you know how he's putting this burden on every single person. People are asking me, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do about this? And I'm sitting here asking musicians and artists what the answer are when political people can't even get their act together because they're too busy trying to get that money. Or can I get on a soapbox here for a second here?
Please do.
All right, it's my show. I'm going to just say it. What
That's
the heck?
right.
Yeah.
So the main point is, what can people do? What can people that are checking out your music, people that are just curious, that don't want history to get erased, that don't want to, and this is people of all races.
Yes.
Because there are a bunch of allies up in this too, and they're like, are going in situations where people are like, if they say, hey, what about this thing going on in racism? And they're like, you're being a race traitor by saying that things are racist against
That's a good
black
band.
people.
Race Trader.
That's a band.
That is a
Yes.
very famous band.
Right
They're friends
on,
of
right
ours.
on.
They actually put us on the compilation called "Shut It Down" right after George Floyd.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got together. It was Manny. I'm gonna butcher their last name. I apologize. Mustafi, from Race Trader. They put together a compilation as White Passing. I don't know their ethnicity, but I know that I don't believe they are American, but I could be wrong. But they are White Passing. However, they have a band called Race Trader. Race Trader is a band that is very well known in our community, along with Cypher. Anyway, so they put together a compilation to raise funds to do something.
For the movement of Black Lives.
Correct.
Right on.
Yes.
And which the lead singer of Cypher, Mo Mitchell, he's up there somewhere and I don't know his position for the movement for Black Lives, but he works for them.
And the Working Families Party.
And the Working Families Party,
Yes.
that's what he
Yes,
used
yes.
to work for Movement for Black Lives, and now, okay, yeah, that's what it is. It was something like that. Anyway, hardcore kids got together, raised some money, put a bunch of bands of all races and identities, and the band was called Race Trader, so
Right.
Yeah.
check them out.
So
And it's still on Bandcamp.
Still is.
all right,
15
so
songs.
I will throw this out there. Speaking of compilations, fill in the blank.
We had the pleasure of, well, I'll backtrack. When I started to play music, before I came back to New York, I was in the Bay Area. And Revolver Records from Ireland reached out to us and invited us to participate in a pandemic fundraiser for women-owned venues on the West Coast. And the two venues for this compilation that received the benefits are the Ivy Room and Bottom of the Hill in San Francisco. And those two venues are very close to my heart, as that's where I kind of got my start in music. So they released a colored vinyl. It's a double vinyl compilation. We have a song on it that we recorded live at Applehead Studios in Woodstock with Mike and Chris. Shout out to those guys in Sartes. And UK Subs are on it. The Avengers are on it. It's a great compilation. It's called Trapped in the Dressing Room. I believe they still have some copies left on Bandcamp that people can order, and all the proceeds go to the venues.
Yes.
This is the section that I like to call the 1865 Solve Racism and
Oh,
all
boy.
the other things. Sorry to put it upon you guys, but I'm going to shoulder you guys with all this stuff.
Many
All
of
right.
us were born
Get
for
these
this
sleeves
moment.
rolled
Right,
up.
dude.
Yeah,
Your
there you go.
Googles.
You're ready.
Dude,
All right.
your Googles.
So here's my question. The patriarchy. When people say something like, musicians should just stick to the music, but you guys, the politics is already baked into the music. You cannot separate the two. So what people going to do about what the patriarchy going to do about that?
Nothing.
Well, it's working hard right now. Speaking of
Yes,
the
please,
president.
Biz, tell.
I am constantly amazed at what we as people of color endure in this country to continue to simply ask that the country live up to what was written, not by people of color.
Oh, it's
mind you.
promised to them.
So I think that the fact that there's a consistent fight there is proof positive that there will always be factions that will want to regress and go back to the idea of a better time, a simpler time.
Oh, making America great? When it was when?
Well, just when men simply made decisions and things weren't
About women's
questioned.
uteruses?
Right.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
And I wish that we lived in a country and a nation that all people, all women specifically, felt completely comfortable making the selfish decision to say, I'm simply going to make a decision that is best for me and for my body. If that were simply the case, where we lived in a nation that was that free, everything that we know to exist would be different, simply based on demographics.
Yeah.
And so working to put that into the art that we make to convince people to allow them, whether they choose or not, to live free, and as we stand on the precipice of trying to relegate women to second-class citizenship, I think it begs us to question who has been making all of the decisions, why, and if we're honest, if we're going to be honest about who we are, seeking information in this world, we have to change who we put in leadership to get the true, to make it such that the words on the page are honest and that they apply equally to everyone, because we're not there and we're a long way from it.
So why do they want to control the women? I'm going to throw this out to the ladies.
Well, it's not just women.
Not everyone with a uterus or that has the right, or sorry, that has the ability to reproduce life identifies as a woman.
Yep.
So
You are
this
right.
is like, as much of like the way that I believe immigration is a black feminist issue, I believe that reproductive rights is also like a human rights
A
issue
human rights
Yes.
in
issue.
general.
Yes.
And I also believe that it's a queer issue, and I believe, you know, so I feel that the patriarchy, I used to think that way. I used to think about like this, I've heard this rhetoric as an immigrant, right? I'm not first gen, I'm a straight up immigrant. And I have heard my entire life, especially living 5 minutes from the White House, that like, oh, you know, our forefathers intended these rights to be evident
pronoun
for
trouble.
all people, you
Pronoun
know,
trouble.
of this land. And I believe, why are we still, I believe, okay, let me rephrase. I believe the rhetoric around this narrative of trying to hold the American government accountable for promises to people, marginalized people, is the wrong approach, because that's not true. That's not what happened. The people that made this constitution or whatever, or founded this illegally
already here.
occupied Turtle Island,
Yeah.
land back. So like those folks never intended for us to benefit from anything. We weren't even really supposed to stay here that long, you know. As a Brazilian, which the majority of my country identifies as black, we're the largest population, we're 65% of the population. We are the largest population of black people on earth outside of Africa, only second to Nigeria. Shout out to my Yoruba people. And we were the last people to be like, all right, fine, I guess we'll get rid of the slaves. You know what I mean? They were the last ones to ever
Brazil,
abolish.
right?
Yeah, Brazil
Yeah.
was the last one to ever
Yeah.
abolish enslavement of African people. And they didn't go down without a fight, let me tell you. You know, and so people always say, oh, well, Jim Crow this and Jim Crow that. You know, we can get into another discussion of how Brazil got away with that murder without calling it Jim Crow. You might not have used race in your laws, but you use other things that obviously put one demographic of people below the other.
Oh, that's how
and
they
the
do it here.
favela
Yeah.
is a very good example of like, you screwed up, you can't get away with this one, you know? Anyway, so in terms of patriarchy and today, and the patriarchy is going to continue to use systemic ways to violently oppress anyone that tries to challenge it and its purpose. And its purpose is to uphold capitalism and to uphold a certain part of society to be able to benefit directly from capitalism at whatever. And it's a form of capitalism that is just straight up like inhumane, you know? Not that but you know, we can argue that later. But women's rights and reproductive rights are, women's rights are part of reproductive rights, but reproductive rights is bigger than just a women's issue. There are a lot of people who have those organs in their body but do not at all identify or are still figuring out how to identify around the word woman. So I want to make sure that we're showing them love too. Not that you weren't trying to at all. I just also picked up on that. And then let's be very honest about the fact that the people of this country that illegally occupied Turtle Island and created these laws had no intention whatsoever, which is why me and like really performative liberal folks don't get along politically on this issue. It's because they never intended for any of us to be treated like human beings. We're not considered human beings per their law. Literally, chattel slavery is a word for a reason. You know what I mean? Whatever. And it's not just us. There were indentured servants, and there were, Palestinian and Jewish folks and whatever that also suffered. And then what I called the new whites, which were the white passing Italians and Irish that came to the country and had to go through their discrimination. Not the same thing. Please stop trying to argue like we're one and the same. We are not.
I've seen that one.
You know what I mean? And then they were like, oh, we're white now, so it's cool or whatever. And now you, with your, the M word in Italian for us black folk,
Right.
these guys over here with the chain and the thing, and da-da-da. You know what I mean? Now it's okay. Anyway, and then you look at Bed-Stuy, where a lot of us live at, and with a lot of Orthodox Jewish communities, not all of them, but most of them that are Trump supporters, anti-vax, anti-mask, anti-black. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, we see what you're doing. One of the things that I love about the black political leaders that I've studied in my life and that we talk about in our music a lot is that one thing they all had in common, even if their strategy for freedom and liberation looked a little different, the one principle they all had in common is, I am not asking you and I'm not holding you accountable for anything, because I have to I have to appeal to your morality, and you have none, to your consciousness, and you have none, for you to be able to do what you do and watch us suffer the way we suffer and you have the power to stop it, and you don't lift a finger. You have none.
No humanity.
So, no humanity whatsoever. So, however, every single one of the black political leaders that we have spoken about in both our bands and everything have one thing in common, and that one thing is common. I'm not asking you for something. I'm taking back what always belonged to me, and that includes my dignity and my humanity, and I'm gonna take my dignity and I'm gonna go, period. So that's what we gotta be very careful about. America was never created with the intention. That's one thing that, like, during Obama's presidency, I was like, bro, no, I know you gotta do what you gotta do, but no, you know what I mean? It's like saying, like, the promises of this land from our forefathers. I was like, you mean your slave masters? Like, what are you talking about? Those aren't your daddies. You don't know them. That they never intended for any. So it's okay, is my point. I'm gonna leave it at that. We don't need to adhere to that narrative to justify our movements. It's okay, it's our birthright. We have the right to come here and say, hey, you got here off of our labor and our enslavement, our genocide, our assault essentially on our humanity. We have the right to reclaim back what's ours and to revolutionize the way this country is going, because it's not working for anyone else but the five of yous.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let's just be clear that it's okay to change the narrative, and shout out to the liberals who are like starting to think for real, and be like, oh, maybe I was wrong to think that diet racism is the way to go.
Right.
So anyway.
So speaking of black leaders, or just leaders in general, where are, like, we come from a time of where people think like that of a Malcolm X or that of an MLK or stuff like that. Where are those, like, these spokesperson leaders? Do they still exist now? Is there a new evolution of them coming? Please enlighten me.
I mean, Amazon just.
Yeah.
Kimberly Crenshaw.
I think it's purposeful that we, to Flora's point of changing the paradigm.
Yeah.
Starbucks too. They're getting their
Starbucks
unions
is
too.
on the
Unions are
road,
coming.
yeah.
It's realizing what a lot of those generational leaders were trying to remind us is not the trickery of human enslavement was to make people think that there is a messianic savior, to shift the energy of change from within you to something outside of you. And what those generational leaders, at least my take was that they were reminding us to connect with the internal power to change our own lives individually. And by doing that en masse, society changes. What we're experiencing now in terms of the arcs that we've been talking about, to technology growing, society regressing, but also being able to self-segregate. The negative part of that is people self-segregate with the information, with like-mindedness. And the way to push back at that is by not looking for one person to change, which was Obama was the sort of political embodiment.
Obama got elected,
of that.
Racism solved.
Right.
Yeah,
But
didn't work out.
to look for change moments that we can adhere to, start, initiate, fund, support, because it's not, as my buddy has a great shirt, it says democracy is not a spectator sport.
Right.
But American society, by and large, is a spectator kind of society. It'll sit there and, you can scroll all day, but that's people who are out there who are trying to make change. People who are trying to make changes in their lives. No hate on vegans. Be a vegan, but don't be racist about it.
Right.
Be like, I love meat, but that doesn't mean that we want to oppress women or the LGBTQ community.
Right.
We can have those lines, but they don't have to define you or let them refine you, such that it's like, I can be a vegan and I can be liberal-minded and I can understand that white male patriarchy exists, and that such that we're beginning to work towards dismantling what has held us back.
Right.
The society has needed, for whatever reason, certain incremental change, but as we've seen technology and people have you can look at the change that you can have in 1 year of your life in terms of getting healthier or becoming more educated, or if you can do that in 1 year, imagine what you can do en masse.
Yeah, especially with the pandemic and stuff like that, made people
A lot of people
stepping up when the whole George Floyd thing was going on. People stepped up and did stuff, and then of course there was a backlash on that.
Yeah.
People
Yes.
just like, we don't like this, so let's turn them into an enemy. Let's turn them into like, Black Lives Matter is the enemy. Let's turn people that are anti-fascist. Let's turn them into a boogeyman that they could push to the media to make people scared.
That's the spectator aspect.
Yeah.
You've made it such that it's the boogeyman that people can watch, as opposed to the thing to tell people to go out and initiate yourself in being involved. January 6th was a sort of backlash in that effect, where people were saying, we've made these boogeymans for you. Now you need to react and go respond to it.
I've never
Right.
seen nobody on our side of the fence dress up in a Viking suit, though, with a hat and body paint.
I mean outside of cosplay or Comic-Con.
I was
Right.
like, oh, we're doing that
Because we also do that. Blurs will do, get on
I
some
meant
anime
like to
Viking.
take to the street.
No,
blur,
like
a
they
blur
really
gonna blur.
believe they're a Viking.
A blur go blur, let me tell you. Y'all on Instagram, I'm like, wow, okay. Okay, I understand. I do. I get that. I appreciate that. I think that, God, I think, with the whole, on the other spectrum, right? As a meat eater, hi, my name is Flora, I eat meat. Come on, hi,
I'm with
Flora.
you.
I love chicken wings. But what happened was, my vegan friends, shout out to y'all, I guess, whatever. My vegan friends, they're like, but where'd your food come from? And what's the treatment of the people that cultivated and worked that farm? And how did the whatever? And I was like, why y'all gotta always make me think about stuff?
Yeah.
But I'm glad they did, because then I'm like, oh, those are my people. Wait a minute.
right.
That's what's happening in my country. That's my auntie and my uncle and my cousin. And I'm like,
capitalism.
on both sides.
And then we could talk about that diabetes that people are getting from eating these certain things and doing these things,
all
and then
that
we have to
stuff.
turn around
Which
and pay.
capitalism is okay
Capitalism
with
at
you
their best.
getting.
Because then they make their money.
They make their money, and
Cultural
they're going to make
racism.
you pay for. They're going to give you the disease. They're going to give you all this food. You're going to eat that food. All these companies. I mean, don't even get me started on all the big things that they're pushing, like say Popeyes or something like that, is being directed towards that. And then you look at the main people that run the company, and just saying.
And
Yeah.
they
Just
make money
saying.
in prison.
And I don't want
yeah,
people to
sure.
like
Prison
get
labor.
lost
Yeah.
in this idea that it's all just liberals. That there's snakes in everybody's
Yep.
grass.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
My issue is use discernment. That's the word.
So everybody-
for this
everybody
year.
of every race
Use
should use discernment.
Use discernment, and how you can tell somebody ain't really about this life is performativeness.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah.
Brooklyn, where almost all of us live, it's the historically white coffee shop that has recently popped up somewhere,
Yeah.
you know, next to the
Expensive
Sally's
coffee.
Beauties and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Right.
And then you go
The
in there,
dollar store.
and then all of a sudden, it's a Black Lives Matter poster in the window for about
you know
4
what?
months.
Right, like
And
please,
now
if you
it's
guys are gonna riot, please don't hurt our store.
Like, not us. So my guitar player in Maafa, our friend, my best friend, Anthony, he made this amazing analogy one time. He was like, oh, it's like the lamb's blood over the door.
Yeah.
And I was like, you so smart.
I mean,
was like, wow.
Because it
'Cause
doesn't,
is.
it may not acknowledge the existence of the business.
Right.
May not acknowledge individuals that may have been displaced such that the business can exist.
Right.
B, the exponential connection to the raising of rents in the neighborhood in which the business is now located, hoping to gain subsistence from the individuals who are there
Right.
while making it more difficult for them to exist. And then lastly, the outward sign that it sends that says the neighborhoods, irregardless of who is there, what's been there, what exists, the cultures, it's all fresh and fair game for you to pick from at your leisure. And that's not how
That's the
communities
pioneer.
have. Yeah.
The pioneer mentality.
Exactly.
Yes,
Technological.
get out there.
You
and
know,
like,
It's
I had
not
a-
how communities
in your
have
bone marrow.
got together.
I had a theory about the pioneer mentality when I don't like to tell people that I live in Williamsburg because they
Lewis
think
and
North
Clark.
Side. But like literally like the summer after I moved there, I was like, it really is pioneer land out here because it's not just gentrification, but it's also beards and the lumberjack look. Like they really went all in with it.
They really want to let you know without letting you know that they know
Yeah.
because they know because they know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was
They really
walking
tried it.
through, I think in the East Village with a friend of mine the other day with Pal. And she's from Germany. And she's like, oh, why does this place have a Black Lives Matter sign up? There's no black people
You gotta
here. And I'm
love
like,
Pal.
exactly.
I gotta love
You know,
that.
she's direct. I was
saying.
like, yeah, and they're also not really welcoming us in. You know, it's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
And this pioneer mentality thing is also just like, they want you to know that they know, but they want you to think that they don't know. And that y'all are all supposed to be all kumbaya and
so
everything is
they're
fine.
feigning
It's
they're feigning
pathological. It's like
ignorance.
if my
That's generous.
oppression, if me as an oppressed person or a marginalized person, and these are lyrics I have in my alpha too, and similar lyrics with the 1865. If I can carry the trauma of systemic oppression and marginalization in my bone marrow, in the memory of my DNA, then what makes me think that the descendants of my oppressors don't carry the pathology to default into perpetuating that oppression in their DNA?
I don't
And
see.
if we don't talk as a people,
You're not as inflicted as you claim
To be,
which
right.
is why
why is it my responsibility to initiate that dialogue? Isn't it your responsibility to say, oh, damn, Meemaw, you done messed up. We got to go clean that up now.
But introspection is a heavy lift when privilege is the benefit of being able to be
It's not
passive.
you.
And some can't even see it.
It's,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
purpose.
or even worse, it's the,
Yeah.
but I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah.
You know, I did X, Y, and Z.
What are you talking about? I'm Irish. I'm Italian.
But
It
this
wasn't
is-
even my people. I wasn't even over here.
But
What are you talking about?
The negative the negative ends up being when Serena Williams, one of the most known and respected women in the world, has difficulty being believed when bringing a child into this world. So, that doesn't come
that.
from nowhere.
Say that.
No
I
amount
mean,
of money will get rid of that.
Right, and
Right.
that's
That's
the
privilege.
challenge, and I said this passively to a friend. I said, there are times where I feel like the dark matter in the universe, that which pervades everything that we see but we can't grasp and actually measure, that it's racism. Because it's this thing that we all, the universe wouldn't be held up and existed if it didn't exist. But we can't quantify
Like you saying that is racist.
Exactly.
I love when people saying that
that's the comet in the universe.
Right.
It's like reverse victimhood.
That's the
Yeah, what are you
comet
talking
in
about? It didn't hit my house.
yeah, you may be able to make a one-time connection to it. But I posit this. How many individuals who are not of color will definitively say that a decision that they have made is because of someone else's color? It'll probably never happen. Definitely not in mixed company. So if it can affect your decision making, then acknowledge the fact that it can affect your decision making.
Acknowledge it, period.
What racism demands of people of color is to simply say that, no, this thing that you feel doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's in your mind.
It's global
it's gaslighting.
Right.
Right on.
It's global
Oh, you're just
gaslighting.
like
Yo,
sensitive.
I'm
Yeah.
literally
Not that bad.
walking in a store. I'm wearing a suit, and people mad following me.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, here's my favorite one. I was just mentioning this earlier today. Where they do the thing where they check you on the train station, this kind of a thing. I'm like, I asked my friends that, I do have white friends, and I asked them, I said, how many times you got stopped by the cops? And they were like, no, none. But how many times I got stopped by the cops? 4. I'm like, seriously? Come on now. Come on now.
He listens to Real Big Fish. How much of a threat could he be? that's the used guy's way of answering. Not for nothing, I ain't trying to be racist, but you know,
every
maybe if you
single
didn't wear that jacket, nobody would mess with you. Look at you over here.
I should have just complied.
You did this. Thank you.
We spoke on so many things. Reparations. Can I ask about reparations? I see. My favorite is that if a person goes to the 1865 show, the merch table, it says reparations.
Yeah, I always say meet me at the reparations
That's
table.
not a joke, though.
Yeah,
Every
I
time
know.
you buy my stuff,
People buy merch.
Reparations we have to revolutionize how we think about it.
Yes.
It does not only have to come as direct monetary. Because as an artist, I'll take a reparations artist grant for 5 years to go off and
build
make
my
art about my
generational wealth.
experience.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
able to,
Build
it
generational
doesn't
wealth off of
always
my
have
art.
to be just, that's the problem. It's typically thought of as food stamps on a card.
Right.
Yeah, they're thinking
Yeah.
like,
It's not.
oh,
As
look at them.
opposed to
They're gonna be.
alleviating student debt or setting up situations
Or
where,
dismantling capitalism as a freaking whole, because you can't reform something that is that unethical and that inhumane. I'm sorry.
Look at the situation we're in.
can't.
Look at the
burn down the
situation.
church
Why don't
while
we just
you're
do
in
a
the
little
church.
racism? Why don't we just do a little
You're in the
bit?
church,
They gonna
you
put Harriet
can't
on
burn
that
it
dollar bill
down.
down here.
We'll
Look
give
at
you a
that.
stamp.
Get out of here.
What about the thing with the black farms? Like they finally, after years and years and years and years and years of like going to court, they finally say, okay, you guys have been treated unfairly. We're going to give you guys some dough. So then all of a sudden, all the other farmers are like, you're giving them preferential treatment.
Thank you.
Because why?
Now,
Did Queen Sugar
the
say
amount of
something
that
about
bill
this?
was,
About
do you
this
remember it offhand?
No, off the top.
$837 billion.
Oh, they don't want to pay that.
To be given out to black farmers across the south of the
That's
Mason-Dixon line. $837 billion
That's
for
it?
generations of what
For
have you.
600
yeah.
years.
Which had been solved in court on
try
the
it.
basis of affirmative action. And in the ruling, the white farmers say that's affirmative action, and it stops.
And they overturn
So that's in saying, women's rights, as I said with Flora, that's just going to the point of the limitation of the argument.
Right.
Because for so many people, women does not even include someone who does not, farmer does not include someone who is black. Cowboy as a term is specifically these people.
Right.
So that's baked in, woven into
Also
the
Native
system that we
American
live in.
also.
Because you can't.
Yeah.
Because you can't. we can't, I don't know if disassociate is the right word. We can't separate,
Yeah,
I guess,
disassociate.
gender, like identity politics from capitalism, from whatever. It's all together. The whole reason why we're going through the stuff we're going through is because of this inherent greed for power and money at the core of it all, right? So like the construct, the social construct of the binary gender spectrum, of the gender binary, the social construct of race, the social construct of wealth, of whatever. This is all manufactured on purpose for a reason. And the more we adhere to it, the more we subscribe to it, the more we perpetuate it, the more like it's just gonna keep happening logically. But what I agree with what you're saying, and I believe that what's happening is there's this awakening happening in this generation that I do like, and it's like this normalization, you know, thanks to our generations having to go through the abnormal. Right? Their generation gets to grow up in a post-Obama world. Some kids were literally born like 5-6 years before he got elected, and they just grew up like Obama, Trump. Yeah, that's pretty normal. That's all right. Social media, whatever. They don't know a reality outside of that, and that affects their like. Well, why do you have to like gender them? Like gender's a spectrum. Like whatever, blah blah blah. That's such a normalized way of thinking. Where for us, sometimes it's still kind of like, can we say that?
Right.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I want to say non-binary, but it's not a cuss word. Black is not. I hate when people like, especially non-black people, are like, "Oh my gosh, Flora, that's so nice to meet you. My Office is one of my favorite bands, or whatever." You know, I too have a black friend that also.
Yeah, they whisper.
It's like, you know, I saw someone today with the My Office shirt. Oh, what do they look like? Maybe I know them. They had dark hair, dark eyes, and the fear starts rising up. You know, a little heavy set, and they were black. Is that okay? Is it okay that I said black? Is that all right? I didn't mean it like black. I mean like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you know? And it's just this diarrhea of the mouth thing that a former friend of mine used to say. She coined it very well. They have this diarrhea of the mouth thing where they just, you know, they just tell on yourself. All I did was
showing
walk in the door. I didn't even say nothing. I said hello, and they're like, 'cause black people. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've had some people that just
verbal assault.
Think about how much money, just putting it in monetary terms, Mississippi is going to save by banning all contraception. They're going to save so much money.
Is that what they're saying?
I mean, these are the things that we have to game out.
Our books
Mississippi being so ahead of the game. Mississippi being first in.
Sounds like reading was banned there.
States with S's in their name. Are thinking of banning contraception.
Look at his face.
They need to look at the health records
I gotta ask. I know this is totally. I want to ask about the new album, and I want to ask about the songs that you guys are writing. But I gotta ask, what is the end game on this? So you know, you cut off the contraception, you cut off the women's right, control.
It's all about control. Because when people lose power and they lose access to resources, they become desperate and compliant.
They have to raise a bunch of kids.
I don't think
they have to raise a bunch of kids.
I don't predict that that's what will really happen, but that's worked in the past for America.
I mean,
so.
And you're from Kentucky.
And I'm from Kentucky, and you know, Mitch McConnell.
Right.
I don't know what deal he made that he's still alive, and I don't wish death upon anyone, but I'm just astonished.
Baby's blood.
I feel like. Yeah, it's all about control. Because also the way we talk about the fact that, you know, as black people and people of color and non-conformist people, we are not considered human. So, yeah, women's rights, women don't have rights. Women are property.
What right?
In the minds of these people.
They want to go back to
and then the women like the Amy Coney Barretts of the world agree to be property.
Why?
They look at it as this strange privilege, and I don't know if that's part of a religious
Internalized
situation,
thing.
internalized misogyny. They feel safe in their role. They don't want to hurt their brains making these decisions.
Pathological, though. It's historical.
It's really
They've
frightening.
always done that.
It's terrifying. But yeah, it all comes down to killing people's hope. You know, like the fact that people are against eliminating student loan debt. And we're
Well,
not.
I had to pay my student loan. I'm not
Right.
speaking for myself. I
Yeah.
personally had to pay off my student loan.
You
I
should-
did
you
too,
should
and you know
suffer
what?
because
I would
we
never
suffer.
wish upon any person
makes a lot
who wants an education that they can't get it because they don't have family money,
Right.
or they
Yes.
can't work enough jobs, or you're
To
working
pay
so many
for it.
jobs you can't do well in school, you can't get to, like, it's just too many challenges. And I don't know, I feel like America, I don't like to use the term third world country, but we are perpetrating a fraud because we're not leaders as a nation, not us.
Yeah.
We try to be leaders in our community.
Right.
But this nation,
By
we're not
example.
leaders nor heroes. And it's all, look at how we treat our citizens. It's
We're
a farce.
we're not this greatest country in the
No.
world because we are the superhero. You know, Captain America.
They're the greatest-
We're the
yeah,
superhero
they're the
of
ones
the
that have
world.
the
Every
money
time you
when the
dang shithole country's gonna get in trouble, we gonna go over
We're
there.
gonna come on-
We
we gonna
gonna
come and
save
save
you.
you.
You know, that's not what that is. That's not how that works.
We're gonna send y'all some weapons
Exactly.
and help you burn it down.
I didn't see them doing anything in Ethiopia. I mean, they don't have any
I
oil.
mean, what you did was you sustained a system after Arabic oppression. We'll fight about that later. But after the thousands of years we were under that rule, then you come in there and you go and you underdevelop and disenfranchise the continent and all its resources, and then you enslave and systemically oppress, rape, pillage all of its descendants and its husband and its homies and cousins.
Is that in the book, a
Is
history
that-
book that you
it
read
got
that
banned,
we banned
baby.
and
It got
burned?
banned.
what-
It
what
don't
is this
flip
history
that
book
no
that you
more.
speak
No,
of?
it's what you're talking about.
Not in Mississippi.
You're talking about we don't have
Exactly.
condoms.
We don't talk about that. We don't have
We don't have
condoms.
books.
We
we
don't
don't
have
have
books.
teachers
And
in our schools.
a lot of other things you don't have.
And that is the whole
That's
thing.
exactly right.
Exactly what Honey Child's
And
talking
so
about.
you know, so for me, it's like don't be surprised. What I hate isn't people being like, oh, I never saw it that way. Now I see it that. What I hate is when you know. And you knew better, you didn't do better, then you go and act surprised like you didn't know. Of course, the descendant of the massa and the descendant of the missus are gonna still be acting exactly like that in today's society. You mad because Karen's standing by her man and getting all of the benefits of being able to perpetuate white supremacy and capitalism with her husband? Of course. What was the, remember that TV show that just came out, that docuseries about Gloria Steinem and everything for the Equality Act, whatever. The other one, you know, there's always been the Southern belle that's conservative, that's just like, well, why these crazy women want to come out here? Well, I love my husband. I want to stay at home with my children. What's wrong? You're oppressing me. For making the choice to be, you know, a wife and a mother and blah, 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 blah. They get it. Don't sleep on these women. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
They know exactly what they're thinking.
They're benefiting.
They're benefiting from it. They're doing it on purpose. They don't really care about staying in the house. They know we're right. They don't care about that.
It's not about them staying in the house.
No,
Period.
they want us to stay in the house. And they also want us to clean it.
That's exactly what we just got done.
They want us to stay in the house and clean it.
They want us to be in the house and clean it and raise their children so they can go out and go on book tours about how women should be at home with their children and be married.
I mean,
And then we'll be so tired, we can't do nothing
Woo,
else.
we can't do
and
nothing
this is the
else.
evolution because we can call someone who owns a $50 million yacht in Russia an oligarch and they can seize their boat, but Jeff Bezos and other people who would be modern day slave masters in.
They are because they're
They
colonizing
literally
the moon.
are not. You're not allowed in Amazon, or you're not allowed to say. You can't say plantation. I knew somebody that actually worked in Amazon thing. He said, I've never heard somebody compare this to being on the plantation and like more in my whole life than being at this job.
And that's also an old thing as black people that we've been hearing since our grandparents, you know, of being like, how was your day on the plantation today? Oh, girl, blah, 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 whatever. At least in the South, you know?
Yeah.
And how could you expect any kind of like ethical treatment of workers in a company that is one of the biggest epitomes of hyper-capitalism, whose leader and founder is literally trying to colonize the moon? I want to show me where that ethical comes from. I'm not saying I have not shopped there because I got to be the first one to admit my faults.
Well,
but that prime, let me tell you, that prime.
In 1865, there was a period where black people started to get their rights.
Yes.
And there was a period at which it stopped and it regressed.
Well, we also were elected to office.
We were elected to office.
Right. That didn't work out too good in Wilmington.
Right. And we have not been able to exercise. We haven't, because there's been so much infrastructure created to keep us, as Honeychild said, poor.
Powerless.
Distracted, hopeless.
Uneducated.
Resource. Right.
Yes.
And so
Disorganized
that's-
amongst each other,
that's
which
the
is
game
the big
that
one.
that we're all fighting. It's a shame that, I mean, as artists, what we try to do is create the thing that can feed the masses such that they're less distracted and can actually focus on, what we're talking about. We live in a terribly, terribly, terribly distracted world these
Yeah.
days.
Yes.
Right on, yeah.
Yes, we do.
Well, speaking of waking people up, can you please tell us about the new album, please? We got to wrap this up for real.
We started recording right before the pandemic at Applehead Studios. Shout out to
Thanks, pandemic.
Mike and Chris. We did one session actually. Wasn't it in 2020 when we went up and we did the?
It was October 2020 during the fall.
Her favorite
the
time of
best
year.
foliage ever because I love Woodstock. I'm finna move there one day. Shout out to Mike Birnbaum and Chris Bittner
Yeah,
at
they're
Applehead,
great.
which is my favorite studio on earth, period.
Shout out
And
to
so,
Simi
yeah.
Stone who
Simi,
dropped in and
Simi
played
came
violin with
through.
us again.
But yes,
Yeah.
it was October
Great
2020.
session,
Yes,
October
yes.
2020.
So
Insane.
we've been invited to return and finish up. So looking forward to that.
Do you have a name of it?
We don't have a name of the album
It
yet.
will be blacker though.
Yes.
Blacker than ever. Okay, just like that.
And,
more
Blacker,
unapologetic.
bolder,
Yes,
more-
that's what I was going to ask.
And
Can
more
we even
modern.
get there?
More modern.
We've moved beyond. We're in the 21st century now.
Right, I noticed you guys were going through a certain thing, like from here, and it's like the evolution with time.
Yeah.
So now you're going to go to the latest phase, so whatever in time that you guys
Yeah.
will be speaking about this time.
Was it Nina Simone that said she makes music to talk about the times we're living through? Like that's really my approach to this whole project.
So that's
as
the next
well.
one. Now you're talking about
And
now.
it's every time we get together to rehearse, we have this kind of conversation.
Right.
Yep.
We catch up, we hee-haw, whatever, but we also talk about what's happening in the world. And
We usually block off like 2 or 3 hours.
We need a
only
few
play
hours,
an hour and a
definitely.
half tops out of that time. The other time is doing this,
Yeah.
working out our ideas. I often have said ever since, especially once Biz joined the band, and it was like, oh, here we go, that's family.
Yeah.
Ever since then, band practice, we'll have it even if there's a show coming up randomly,
Right.
because band practice for us is therapy.
Yeah.
Like, band
It's
practice
community
for us
time.
it's community
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly, and building off ideas. And this is one of the only places, because I'm pulled in so many directions in my professional and personal life right now. 1865 and Ma'afa, but specifically this band. It's the one time a week or a month or whenever we do get together where I can literally have a safe space to bounce off ideas and creative ideas that I want to do that are centering these kinds of radical politics, and have people meet me on that intellectual level and who have already had the experience of manifesting their own visions and supporting me that way. It's one of the healing things for me as somebody who was a skinhead girl growing up with a lot of internalized misogyny in myself around a lot of like hyper masculine, hardcore, hyper masculine, hyper masculine everything. Meeting and befriending and becoming family with Honeychild is one of the few times in my life where I'm being fully supported, validated, seen, heard, and reciprocated by another just another woman in general. It's happened many times in my life, thank God, but with Honeychild, she was the first one. I'm like, oh, you do what? You play what? I play I'm Tuesday, 8 o'clock, be here. Let's go work. And it's been that way like nonstop ever since. And I just want to say that those little parts, that are little to everyone else, that's what I believe makes this band what it is, which is an experience. It's not just, hey, guess what happened at this year back in the day.
Right.
It's like, do you not see that the same thing is happening now?
Right.
Do you not see that this is pathological?
Right.
Do you not see that history is repeating itself? And do you not see that you should know this to understand this so we can get there? And also here's some community and some I love you moments.
Let's
you know what I
dance.
mean?
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
dance.
Let's dance.
Let's dance through the end of the world.
Let's break bread. Let's catch up.
For me, I'll just say as the last person to join the group, as a black man, it is a joy to be in 2 bands supporting fully supporting, like walking the walk. If you want to get rid of toxic masculinity, you want to help dismantle the patriarchy, be a foot soldier. Support someone, a woman, someone who's gender nonconforming. Support people who are marginalized. Support people who are hated on, who get down talked and downtrodden. People who get, crapped on the news. Find those people because they're making music. They're talking about their experience.
And they can support them by going to shows.
Going to shows, buying their
merch.
music, buying
Talk
their
about
merch.
what they're doing.
Talk about them. Raise their name at a show.
Yeah, here we
Yeah.
go.
I found out about more bands from other people's shirts than I found on going through Spotify sometimes.
Yep.
It's my favorite.
So,
It's my favorite music discovery tool.
And you meet people who are like you and experience in life, who have battled adversity, who figured it out, and who've been true to their art and been true to themselves the whole time.
And that's going back to your point in your first question, about what can we do, and in terms of the album, tying everything we've been talking about from your first question to leaving it on the what's up with this new album is, in my opinion, this is what creatives do. We create. That's what we can do. It's not just, like for Maafa, I'm not just expressing or creating or desabafando, how do you say that in English? Venting, whatever. It's not just that. It's also documenting, archiving, and reframing and recontextualizing the narratives and reclaiming those spaces and that power. That's why to me being an artist is one of the most important and most amazing journeys in life and tools in life and callings in life.
Journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely a journey.
Definitely.
There's no destination.
It's not a
But
job.
that's what I think we can do. Whatever your power is, create and document so that when they tell the story later and they try to leave you out, you have receipts to be like, no, that's not
We
how
were
it went
here.
down. Here you go, you're corrected.
Honey Cho has
Speaking of
receipts.
which, we have a
She has
band
receipts
receipt
of
for
him.
you.
A band receipt.
band
Coming
receipt.
via
Oh, look at that.
our ancestor and leader,
Honey Cho's the
Yes.
queen.
Harriet
Dude.
Tubman.
She really is DIY for
What is-
life.
what
Because
is
we
I know, right?
we appreciate you.
Oh my goodness.
Bringing us on, so-
Oh my goodness.
No.
This
Some
is for
merch.
you.
Nice.
Some swag.
Oh yes. I will wear this proudly.
Nice.
Right on. Thank you so much.
And the next time you're having a pint,
Oh,
protect your
nice.
drink.
Well, I'll
That's the
have
best.
some water and I'll put it on some
There you
seltzer
go.
on there. But thank you
Keep
so
Or
much.
kombucha.
Kombucha.
You know.
Do pints of seltzer make you strong?
Hey,
so much. All right,
no,
so
thank you for having us.
I must really give it up. Let's give it up for the 1865
Thank you.
Honey Child, Flora, and Biz, and also Sasha representing out
Yes,
there. So,
yes.
so looking forward to their new album. And also, Flora, I want to ask you, how do you play instruments with your nails so long? But we'll take that. We'll take up
Because
that
they
question.
pop off, don't come for
Word.
me.
Okay,
You
okay.
who go check
Annie
me, not
DeFranco.
you.
Annie DeFranco.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, I'll leave it at
Annie
that.
DeFranco. other
No, do you know about
classical
her
guitar
thing?
What?
She picks with nails.
With
Okay,
Yes.
respect.
That's actually
Yes.
a classical traditional style, but anyway, I don't play with picks and I don't play with nails because my daddy is a bass player. As a jazz bass player, that's gonna be an issue. That's not how you do it for me. I'm not Matt Freeman, bless his heart. I'm just saying.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the 1865.
Thank you.